Hello, this is Texas BK and welcome to another installment of NoobStone, where we take a simplified look at how redstone components work to where it's not only easier to build, but to understand different redstone contraptions. Today we're going to be taking a look at a simple 3x3 piston door. These are a lot of fun to build, but unless you understand the mechanics, they can be a little bit confusing. So let's go ahead and get started today so we can learn all about how 3x3 piston doors work. Let's get started. The basic footprint for our piston door is a 5x7 rectangle with one block sticking out on either side of the center. This is the row where our piston door is going to go. We also will have two blocks here on the bottom right hand corner where we'll be putting our input to open and close the door. Once you've identified the center block of your door, go ahead and place two sticky pistons facing upward on top of each other. Let's go ahead and put in the blocks that will make up our door as well. So go ahead and put 3 across the bottom like this. Then go up and place 3 going up on the right, leaving off the corner. Then go 3 across the top, again leaving off the corner. And then do the same thing coming down the left side of the door as well. Now you'll notice that we've placed a total of 12 blocks so far, but our 3x3 door only will need 9 of them to fill in the opening. That means that 3 of the blocks do not move. This block will not move, this block will not move, and then this one as well. Now I would recommend leaving these blocks the same color and type as the rest of your door. I'm replacing them just for the purpose of this tutorial so you can more easily see which blocks will not be pushed by a sticky piston. Now the opening and closing sequence of the door is pretty straightforward. These two on the left will be pushed to the right, one block. These on the right will be pushed to the left, one block to the left. And those on the top will be pushed down one block as well. Now the part that gets a little more complicated are these two blocks right here. This center block needs to come up to the center of the door, and this block on the right needs to be pushed right here to fill in the gap that the other 7 blocks leave. To better see and understand the sequence of how these blocks will be moved, I'm going to use some levers to simulate the sequence of how these pistons will push these 2 blocks into place. But first we need to put another piston off of this block so it can push it in line with the center of the door. Let's place one lever here, one lever there, here, and here as well. The first piston that needs to be activated is the bottom one. It'll happen with a quick pulse, which will extend both this piston and the block on top of it up one block. But when it retracts, it'll leave that block behind. We then need to have this block in place by extending this piston, and then have both of them pushed up to fill the gap that's left by the rest of the blocks. And you can see this will perfectly close the door. Now the closing sequence takes a few extra steps. The first thing that will happen is that this piston will be turned off. Then this piston will be turned off. And then we need to have this piston extended so that the second piston is able to reach the block above it. It then retracts, pulling the block down with it. This piston will pull the piston above it, and then there will be a quick pulse for this piston to extend and retract, pulling this block back into place. Let's go ahead and see that sequence one more time real quick. Bottom piston on and off, piston on the right on, middle piston on, closes the door. To open it, this one goes off, this one turns off, the bottom one is extended, the top one is extended, it retracts, the bottom one retracts, and then it is extended and retracted one more time. So let's look at what circuitry we need in order to make this happen. Now the first in the sequence is pretty easy. This piston needs to extend and retract in one pulse. The easiest way to do that will be with an observer. If we have the observer facing to this block and the rear of the observer pointing into the bottom piston. If you can't see the face, you can tell which way it's pointing by looking at the arrow on the observer. Now this observer needs something to observe, so we're going to use a piece of redstone dust. So that when it is powered, the observer will see it and will send a pulse like we just saw there. Let me go ahead and replace that block so we can see the full sequence in action. The next thing we have to have, once that piston extends and retracts, is for this piston to push the block into place. The way we're going to achieve that is by tying it into our on-off switch and have a repeater pointing into here. Now we need to have both this redstone dust to be powered and this piston to be extended. And the easiest way to do that is with a solid block above the redstone dust. That way, when this repeater receives power, it will power this block, which will power this redstone dust. The observer will see it and will activate the piston. Now the only problem is that both this piston and this observer will receive the signal at the same time. But there's a slight delay for the observer. So we need to have it to where this piston does not push all the blocks to the left one. The easiest way to accomplish this is by placing an immovable block at the end of this row. So let's go ahead and put a piece of obsidian right there. That way when this piston is powered, it will try to push the blocks, but it can't until this one is out of the way. That'll enable this observer to send a pulse to the bottom piston, which will extend and then retract and leave an open spot right here for this piston to push the block into. The next thing we need is to then have this piston push this block up. So we'll do that with a repeater coming off of this block as well. Now, like we said, there is a delay because of the observer of 2 ticks, and then 1 for it to retract, another tick for this piston to push the block in place. So that makes 4 ticks. Let's see if that works. And there we go, perfect. Now making the other blocks push into place is a very simple thing to accomplish. All we need to do is come and place a sticky piston pointing into each one of these blocks. So if we come and place a temporary block there with a piston pointing into the door block, another piston into there, and then a piston pointing this way on both of these, remove the temporary block, and then do the same thing on the top. Now that we have them in place, we just need to get a redstone signal up to each one of these. We're going to accomplish this by tying it into the same lever that we have to turn on the bottom pistons. Now, while you could directly tie this in without any sort of delay and have these blocks all push in simultaneously, I personally like how it looks better when these are in place first and then the side and the top and the left side all push in at the same time. To accomplish that, we need to make sure that the delay coming off of this lever into the rest of these pistons is greater than the 4-tick delay here and the 1-tick delay here. So 4 plus 1 is 5. So we need to place repeaters that add up to 6-tick delay. So we're going to put 3 on here and 3 on here. We'll tie it into this lever once we have all the rest of the redstone dust in place. Now the signal coming from this repeater needs to go into a solid block, and then we're going to use a daisy chain of redstone torches to go up the side of the pistons here. So we'll take one off the side here, and what will happen is when this block is powered, it will toggle this redstone torch off. If we then come and place a block on top of it and a redstone torch on top of that, you'll notice that this redstone torch toggled off. So when this one turns off, this one will turn on. Then come and place a solid block on top of it. And then we need to use redstone to bring it all the way up to the top. Now the easiest way to do that will be to come and place some solid blocks on top of that piston and that block there, and then come back in with the redstone dust across the top of each one. Coming down on this side is slightly harder, as if we were to come straight off, we'll need to use some glass to have it weave back and forth. It's totally doable, and if you like to do it that way, it's perfectly fine. But I like to keep it a little more simple and place a solid block here and one right here, and just feed the redstone dust down the side like this. And then place a solid block off the bottom piston with a piece of redstone dust on it as well. And you can see that all of these pistons are now connected to the redstone signal. All we have to do is connect it to our lever, and all of the different pistons should go simultaneously. Let's see. There we go. It works. Now the sequencing for opening the door requires a little more complicated circuitry, so let's take a look at how that's going to work. The circuit for the opening sequence will be here on the other side of the door. The first thing that will happen when the signal is turned off is that this piston will be retracted. The next thing that happens is this piston will receive a signal from this observer, but because this piston is extended, it will do nothing. It'll just sit there. Then, after the 4-tick delay of this repeater, this piston will be retracted, pulling this block down. So then we need to have this piston extend with one pulse and pull it out of the way. The easiest way to do that will be to come here and place a repeater, and then we'll use an observer to get the signal from that repeater up to that piston and give it a single pulse. But we need to make sure that it happens after this piston has had a chance to be retracted. So we're going to need to put it onto a 4-tick delay. So 2, 3, 4. Then we'll take an observer and place it facing into this repeater. The easiest way to do that is to place a temporary block to stand on, and then go to your observer and crouch place it on top of the repeater. Whoop. Let's go up one more. Then place a solid block on top of the observer so that when it receives a pulse, it will power this piston for one quick pulse to pull the block out of the way. The next thing we need is for the bottom piston to be powered so that it pushes this piston up into this location so it can reach the center block. We're going to accomplish this by placing a redstone dust here and an observer coming off the back of this piston looking forward. Now the only thing is we do not want this observer to be activated when the door is closed. In other words, when this is powered. So what we're going to do to accomplish that is to place a sticky piston facing upward right here and put an observer on top of it facing that way, and a repeater coming off the back of it in that direction. The reason we do this is so that when the lever is turned off and the door begins its opening sequence, this block will no longer be powered, which will cause the piston to retract. The observer will go from seeing an empty air block to some redstone dust, which will cause a pulse to be sent into this repeater. This observer will see this repeater being activated, so it will send the pulse to extend the bottom piston and push this piston upward so it can reach the piston there. So the next thing we need to do is then power this block right here so that the top piston will be extended. All we need to do is to place a solid block here, a piece of redstone dust coming in here, a solid block behind it, and then we're going to do another torch tower going up the side here. Place a solid block right underneath the piece of obsidian, and then another redstone torch on this side of the block. As long as this is not powered, this torch will stay on and this torch will be off. But when this observer is dropped down, this will be powered, which will turn off this redstone torch, which will turn this one on, powering this block for a pulse. We need to make sure, though, that it waits until after this has had enough time to process the signal and extend the bottom piston, which takes 2 ticks, so let's make it 3 ticks. Once that's done, this bottom piston will be retracted, pulling this piston down with it, and so then we need to power the piston directly at this level. And we're going to accomplish this by placing a repeater on top of this observer, place a solid block behind it, a repeater going into that block, a solid block right here with a piece of redstone dust that will be powered by a redstone torch coming off of here. Now the delay that we need on here will be a total of 4 ticks. The reason for this is that there is a 3-tick delay on this repeater, plus the 2 ticks for the observer to power the bottom piston, for a total of 5 ticks. So 1 plus 4, 5 ticks. I think we have everything in place, so let's see it in action. There we go. Perfect sequence. Closing and opening. It's beautiful, isn't it? Now it's important that all of the settings on the repeaters are exactly right. If you don't, there will be a high likelihood that it will not work. So make sure you pay attention really close. 4 ticks on this one, 1 on this. These two should add up to 6 using 3 and 3. This one needs to be on 4 ticks. This one needs to be on 3. This one on 1. And then finally this one on 4. Now if you play on a particularly laggy server, you might have some problems. If you notice the door isn't working on a slower server, you might need to extend the delay on this repeater and on this repeater. All it will do is slightly delay the opening of the center section of the door, but don't worry, it won't cause any problems for it working. It'll just be a little slower. All that's left then is to come in and decorate your door and put the lever in a better spot for you to be able to reach it. So let's go ahead and put in a floor and then something to surround and hide all the redstone components that you use to make your door. Alright, once you have your decorations done for your door, we're ready to put in a lever or a pressure plate to open and close our door. I went ahead and replaced those blocks that I had designated as blocks that weren't going to move. Just remember, if you do something like that, that you check all the redstone dust, that you didn't accidentally break some in reconfiguring the door. The easiest way in order to power our door and have it open and close is to put a lever right here directly above where this lever is. Remove it, put a piece of redstone dust, and now whenever you activate it, it will power the door. If you don't want to use a lever, you can do the same thing with a pressure plate. Place it here in front of your door, and then just add a little extra redstone dust to where it's directly underneath where the pressure plate is located. Place the redstone dust there, but then we need to have it be reversed because we want it to open when we step on the pressure plate. So take that and place a redstone torch off the end of this, remove that redstone dust and that block, and place the redstone dust there. So you'll notice that when you're not standing on the pressure plate, it's activated, which closes the door. But if we come here and step on the pressure plate, our door opens. Off, on. And it should stay open long enough for you to go through. Tying in the other side isn't that hard either. All you have to do is just add in a redstone line that works its way around the side of this and underneath to tie into the other one. Just make sure you don't come too close to these other redstone components, as it will interfere and cause some problems. I recommend putting it like right about there. Let me add a few extra blocks. Place our pressure plate here, and then come underneath it with a 1-block gap in between. And then we just feed it around the side like this, staying clear of the rest of our redstone components. And add redstone dust all along that path. Now the only thing is that you may need to have a repeater in here if it's more than 15 blocks long. And I believe we probably went over that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Just short. So if that's the case, come in and add a repeater right there. About halfway. And it should work for us. And there you have it, the simple 3x3 piston door. It's a lot of fun to build, and honestly, it's not that hard once you understand the sequencing and the concepts of the different components that go into making this door work. Well, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and that it'll help you out in your world. If it does, make sure you leave a comment down below letting me know how you used it. But on that note, I'd like to say thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next one. But until then, this is Texas PK. Be good to each other. Bye!